and Democrats continue seemingly in a never-ending cycle of
Now, from Atlanta News First, the issues that matter to you. This is On the Record.
We have very large differences on health care and on their ability to undo whatever budget we agree to through rescissions.
So Republicans in the House and the Senate, President United, they passed the bill. This is sitting right now at the Senate desk. We could pick it up and pass it tonight.
For the first time in nearly 7 years, the United States government is undergoing a partial shutdown. This happened at 12:01 a.m. on Wednesday, October 1st, 2025, and this is your On the Record with Atlanta News First weekly podcast for my friend and colleague Rick Folbaum. I'm Tim Darnell. Our podcast in the middle of each week here on Atlanta News First talks and delves into some of the national issues that are really resonating across the political spectrum. Rick, there is no hotter topic right now, nothing more timely for us to discuss other than the fact that at midnight, or 12:01 a.m., I should say, earlier this morning, the federal government has been partially shut down as Republicans and Democrats continue seemingly in a never-ending cycle of blaming each other for spending disagreements over the continuing financial operation and the continual funding of the nation's government. It's very frustrating for all of us to cover issues like this because Congress's primary job is to make the federal government operational and keep it funding, and yet this is the seventh, this is about, I want to say, the fifth or sixth government shutdown that we've seen over the last 50 or some odd years.
Yeah, and you're right. And I know this is an important topic because I just got a text from my 18-year-old daughter who's a freshman in college saying, "Dad, what do we do? The government shut down." So this is something that a lot of people are curious about and concerned about. And for some people, that is with very good reason. Certainly, if you are a federal worker, for example, you will be working without any paychecks until all of this is resolved. You will get back pay once it is resolved. So we're talking about federal workers, active members of the military, and we've got a lot of those people here in our state, but there are obviously a lot of people around the country that will be impacted by this. Essential government workers do still have to work and do still have to show up on the job, even without getting paid. So there are other people who are directly impacted by this as well, people who receive certain government assistance, the SNAP benefits, which is what they used to call the food stamps program. Those funds are not being sent out. If you are in need of a passport, if you have international travel that's scheduled sometime in the next couple of weeks, you may not get your passport in time. So there are certain people who will be directly impacted, but for the vast majority of Americans, this is really sort of just a chance to sit back and watch political brinksmanship at its finest or at its worst, depending on your point of view. The last time this happened was during the first Trump administration in December of 2018, and it lasted into January of 2019. It was
longest government shutdown.
Longest shutdown. That one was over government funding for a border wall on the U.S. southern border. President Trump at the time insisted that money for the construction of that wall be included in a government spending bill. The Democrats balked. That went on for a long time. It was eventually resolved when Republicans basically backed off that insistence and went ahead and decided to fund the government anyway, go back to the negotiating table. And just to explain, there is a government shutdown when the government fails to pass and or the president fails to sign an appropriations bill, a spending bill. And that happens every single year. They've got to pass something. And these threats of government shutdowns have become really very commonplace, almost an annual ritual here where one side or the other threatens to shut down the government if they don't get their way over this issue or that issue. And in this case, the Democrats decided that the issue of health care and funding certain healthcare programs here in the United States, that was enough of an issue for them, politically speaking, to stand in the way of what's called a continuing resolution. You just saw John Thune holding up a piece of paper.
Right.
That's a clean spending bill, something that would have given, and will give once it's passed, the government some more time, a short amount of time, but some more time to negotiate a larger, longer spending bill. That's what the Republicans are saying. Let's pass this short-term agreement and continue negotiating. Democrats are saying no. Let's fund these healthcare programs and make sure that Americans who get their healthcare through the Obamacare exchanges, that those people will continue to get the subsidies that right now are scheduled to expire at the end of the year. And Democrats say that that's going to push a lot of people off of healthcare, and that's going to cause a lot of problems for people around the country. So that's what this shutdown is about. How long will it last? Ooh, I don't know. I don't know. What do you think?
Well, as you mentioned, the last time the government shut down, it was the longest in history, 35 days, back in the early days of the Trump administration. Let's talk a little bit about what some of the functions that are continuing to be funded that are not part of this continuing governmental funding resolution. From what we understand, Social Security payments continuing, Medicare payments continuing, veterans health care benefits continuing, National Weather Service. We all are watching, potential storms in the Atlantic and hurricane season. National Weather Service operations continuing, Border Patrol operations continuing, but our own Sarah Hammond
continuing as well.
Right, exactly. Our own Atlanta News First reporter Sarah Hammond was at Hartsfield-Jackson International Airport, which, as you mentioned, there are a lot of airport personnel who are expected to come to work and continue to work and will be rewarded back pay. But she was at Hartsfield-Jackson Atlanta Airport very recently, and I want to go ahead and play and listen to her report.
When you think about essential federal employees here at the airport, that includes TSA agents, air traffic controllers, all an essential part of airport operations. Now, while this shutdown goes on, they are not being paid, but they are still expected to show up to work. Now, airlines have stressed that a prolonged shutdown could strain air travel and impact flights like it did back in 2019. Now, here in Georgia, there are roughly 111,000 federal workers. About 60,000 of them work here in Atlanta. Now, non-essential federal workers are furloughed right now, and the Trump administration has also threatened permanent layoffs to some of those workers. Democrats and Republicans are passing the blame back and forth. The GOP needs just a handful of Democrats to vote for their funding bill, but they're all sitting in an impasse due to disagreements over health care spending.
We are not going to be held hostage for over $1 trillion in new spending on a continuing resolution, nor are we going to be held hostage to allow illegals to get free health care in a continuing resolution.
If there was ever a moment for Donald Trump and Republicans to get serious about health care, it's now.
So will these essential federal employees eventually get paid? I'm sure that's a question on a lot of their minds. But back in 2019, they were given back pay once the government reopened. But it remains to be seen what kind of a strain this government shutdown is going to have here at the world's busiest airport. At Hartsfield-Jackson Atlanta International Airport, Sarah Hammond for Atlanta News First.
That was Sarah Hammond reporting from Hartsfield-Jackson Atlanta International Airport, one of the busiest, I should say, in the world. And Rick, we're talking about perhaps moving into the topic of how this shutdown could affect Metro Atlantans and Georgians. Obviously, Hartsfield-Jackson, one of the busiest and largest airports in the world. air traffic controllers all expected to continue working, Department of Homeland Security, Transportation Security Administration, TSA workers expected to continue working. Could we see a massive backup in airport delivery services? And if so, not only here in Atlanta, but elsewhere across the country. And could that perhaps be a tipping point, sort of a line of demarcation that neither Republicans or Democrats want to cross?
It could be. As Sarah mentioned, these TSA workers, air traffic controllers, all federal employees, they are deemed essential government workers. They are expected to show up and work, even though they're not getting paid. But as we have seen in past shutdowns, the longer these last, the more likely it is for these essential federal workers to start to really, feel the impacts of it. And in some cases, they organize planned sick outs where a lot of them will sort of loosely organize a day when they all call out sick, which of course could be very disruptive to air traffic and traffic through the airport here, as well as air traffic in the skies. So that is something that we could see, again, depending on how long this shutdown lasts. Now, would that be a tipping point? Who knows? You really just have to sort of watch and see how all of this plays out. There really, sort of historically, there are no winners or losers. You can't look at an election that was won or lost by any party or candidate and say, well, that happened because of the government shutdown. But it is a chance for both sides to dig in their heels and to show their base. The Democratic voters who are very dispirited after recent election losses and who have been looking for some messaging and some leadership from their side of the aisle. It's a chance for these Democratic leaders to let their voters, let their base know that they're still here, that they still hear them, that they still have the same priorities, and more importantly, that they're willing to stand up to the Trump administration and fight for those priorities. On the other side of the aisle, of course, there are the Republicans who are saying, look, we want to negotiate. We're willing to sit down. Let's just pass this continuing resolution, give ourselves some more time, and then we'll sit down and do it. And we can even discuss the health care subsidies that you're so concerned about. But we don't want to do it in this continuing resolution. And the Democrats are saying, well, there's no guarantee that if we agree to this, that you're going to eventually be willing to sit down and talk to us. So there really needs to be some more discussion between people on both sides of the aisle. And here's one of the main differences, I think, in this shutdown compared to shutdowns past. We have seen both the Democratic Party and the Republican Party become sort of more polarized. We don't have the kind of centrist Republicans and centrist Democrats who used to be able to get together, sit down in a room and hammer out an agreement that then everybody else would go along with. Those people have all been voted out of office. And now you have politicians who are on the far ends of both of their respective parties. And so how these two sides are going to get together and who's going to be sort of a leader that's going to step forward, or leaders who will step forward to help make this happen, that remains to be seen. We'll be watching it over the next couple of days and weeks.
It's so interesting and ironic that you mentioned the type of centrist leaders that at one time could gather into a room and hammer out their differences. And I want to return to that in just a moment. But this is your weekly On the Record podcast here at Atlanta News First with Rick Folbaum. I'm Tim Darnell. We're talking about issues that are resonating across the national political landscape, but we're also previewing our Sunday broadcast on Atlanta News First, called On the Record, airing every Sunday at 11 a.m., hosted by Rick Folbaum and our outstanding political reporter, Doug Reardon. Rick, you did an interview a couple of days ago that we'll be showing portions of on Sunday, but we're also making available in its entirety on our YouTube channel an interview you did with the newly appointed Israel Consul General for the southeastern United States, Eitan Weiss.
That's right. He is brand new here in Atlanta. He is the top representative of the Israeli government here in the southeastern United States. His territory covers 7 different southern states, but he is based here in Atlanta. And like you said, he is new to the job, just coming on a couple of months ago. We spoke with him, number one, to say hello, to get to know him and hear about what his mission is as he sees it, but also because next week marks 2 years since the horrific terror attack on Israel that was carried out by Hamas terrorists that killed some 1,200 Israelis, mostly civilians, women, children, the elderly, and the war that has followed, the retaliation that Israel has been carrying out ever since that attack to try to get rid of the terror threat from Hamas, which is stubbornly staying in power. There are still hostages who are being held, and so we wanted to talk to him about that. As we approach this 2-year mark, there will be a number of commemorations taking place here in the Metro on Tuesday night, October 7th. And I wanted to talk to him about all of that and also really ask him some tough questions about Israel's
Yeah,
standing.
some very tough questions.
Well, I mean, Israel is facing perhaps its biggest public relations crisis in the history of that country. And it really is something that I think a lot of people in this country are concerned about, both Jews and non-Jews. Israel, of course, has been sort of the standard bearer of democracy in the Middle East. They remain so, but with so many different countries opposed to the way they're carrying out this war in Gaza, it really has damaged their standing, and Israel is now probably more isolated than ever, even as, of course, its connections with the United States remain strong. We just had the Prime Minister of Israel here in the U.S., actually the day that we spoke with the consul general, and he and President Trump talked about an agreement that could potentially bring an end to this war. Hamas has not signed off on it yet, although the Israeli government has said that it would support this deal. So are we getting closer to an agreement? And really, what is the future for Israel? And how does it regain its international standing when all of this is said and done? Those are things that we talked to the Consul General about, Eitan Weiss, and I would encourage people to watch the interview. We'll show some of it, as you said, on Sunday, and the interview in its entirety, unedited, every question, every answer, is also going to be available on our YouTube channel.
It's an outstanding interview. I was sitting in the room as the interview was being conducted, an outstanding job as always. And finally, with this being Wednesday, October 1st, 101 years ago today, James Earl Carter Jr., the 39th, who would grow up to be the 39th president of the United States, was born in southwest Georgia. A historic occasion, and Rick, it was only a year ago that we were reporting on the fact that President Carter was still with us to celebrate his 100 years of life and service to the nation and to the world. Truly a remarkable circumstance, and we'll be covering that his birthday celebrations 101 years ago today will be featured throughout the day here on Atlanta News First. Give us your recollections of that time.
Well, I mean, this is the only U.S. president to have ever come from our state here in Georgia, and so he is sort of a favorite son. As we talked about, he's transcended politics in his post-presidential life. Having only served one term, he really made the most of his time after he served as president, doing charitable work around the world and here in the United States, of course, and really became a beloved national figure, remembered not so much for his partisan ideology or anything like that, but for his role in spreading goodwill and election integrity and a number of other issues, health, global health. This was a man who was a president, but who was also a humanitarian, and he is being remembered on what would have been his 101st birthday. He just left us, as you know, and his, the memories of his memorial service are still fresh for me, having covered that as it was taking place. And one of the most moving eulogies I remember from that service was from President Carter's grandson, Jason Carter, who will once again be speaking today at a ceremony at the Carter Center marking this 101st birthday. They'll be unveiling a stamp, a U.S. Postal Service stamp with the former president's face on it, which I'm sure a lot of people here in Georgia will be looking to snatch up.
Well, our best wishes to President Carter's very large extended family, including his grandson, Jason Carter, and we'll be featuring reports and updates on all of the events and activities surrounding commemorating President Jimmy Carter's 101st birthday. And a reminder to all of you to watch and listen to all of our podcasts on the record with Atlanta News First, available on our YouTube channel and wherever you get your podcast. Thanks to our producer, Maria Moreau. Thanks to Rick Volbaum. And thanks all of you for watching and listening to this edition of On the Record with Atlanta News First. Thank you for watching Political Updates from Atlanta News First Plus. For more breaking news, live coverage, and political updates, download the Atlanta News First app. You can also watch on YouTube, Roku, Apple TV, and Fire TV. Listen to more of our political update podcasts by searching Atlanta News First on your preferred listening platform.